Hey guys, welcome back to the Fun Bikes YouTube channel. I'm Finn and today I'm going to be showing you how to build the RS-R 140. So we can go from this to this. Let's get this thing out of the box. So now we've got the bike out of the cage, I can now talk you through what parts came in the cage and what they'll be used for. The first part you will receive in your cage will be your front wheel. You will receive your kickstand. You'll receive your battery. You will also receive a parts box which will include any nuts and bolts you'll need for this build. You will receive some rim tape, your front mudguard. In this box you'll have some forks, your handguards, your fork covers, and finally you'll receive your number board. So in this part box that I previously mentioned, you'll receive quite a few parts for your build, and now I'm going to run you through them. So first of all, you'll receive your toolkit. You'll receive an owner's manual, which I highly recommend you read through, as this shows you how to take care and maintain your bike. Fork stickers. In this little bag, there are all the bolts and nuts for your build, which I'll further run through later in the video. These are your bolts for your handlebars, your front axle with 2 spacers on it, your gear shifter, your rear shock bolt. In this bag are your 2 foot pegs, and finally, your bar pad and bar pad cover. So from the little parts bag, I've now separated all the nuts and bolts you'll need, and I'm gonna tell you what is for what and where you'll need it. So starting off on the left side, we've got your breather pipe. We've then got your 2 front brake bolts and the 2 washers for it. You've got your front brake line clamp, the bolts and nuts for it in it as well. You've got your front number board bracket, the 2 bolts you'll need for it. You've got your 3 bolts here for your front mudguard, and you've got 6 bolts here and 6 little bracket things, and these are for your front fork covers. So guys, I'm now going to talk you through all the tools you're going to need for this assembly. In your parts box, you will receive a tool bag. This will contain all the tools you will need for the assembly of the RS-R 140, but if you have your own tools, it will make it a lot easier. So starting off, you'll need a set of wire cutters. You'll need a 19mm spanner, a 17mm spanner, a 14mm spanner, a 13mm spanner, a 10mm spanner, an 8mm spanner. You may need a knife or a pair of scissors. I will be using a knife. You'll need a 6mm Allen key, a 5mm Allen key, a 4mm Allen key. You'll need a long screwdriver. Doesn't matter what end it is as long as it's quite a long one. A crosshead screwdriver. You will need a 8mm T-bar, or you can use a ratchet and an 8mm socket, but in my instance I'm using a T-bar. So that's all the tools you're going to need for this assembly, so let's crack on with the build. So moving on to the assembly part, the first thing we're going to want to do is grab your handlebars. We're going to sort out the wiring. Wiring most likely won't come like this, it can be quite messy. So a little tip is any wires coming from the right side of the handlebars here will go through the left side where the forks will be, and vice versa. So on the left side, go through to the right. You also want to make sure your brake isn't down one of these gaps, as it will get pinned and we need to assemble this later. So you can put that to the side. So once your wires are nice and tidy and should look like this, we'll sort these out in a minute. You can rest your handlebars gently like this for now. And now you want to grab your handlebar bolts from earlier. And you'll also want a 6mm Allen key. So you'll want to grab 1 bolt and 1 washer. Just slip the washer onto the bolt. Now I can head back to the handlebars. Gently line up this hole with the bottom here. And once you line these up, you can get your bolt and you can line it up through the bottom, making sure the clamp's flat so you don't cross thread the bolt. You just want to do this finger tight for now, like so. Now your handlebars will be nice and stable for the moment. So now you can grab your second bolt and do the same on this side. And you won't guess it, you can grab another bolt now. You can now grab your last bolt and put it in the final hole, just here. Now once these are all in, you want to grab your 6mm Allen key and just tighten it till it gets to the top here for now, like so. Finally, do these up as tight as possible. There we are. Now once all 4 of these bolts are tight, you can give your handlebars a little test. As you can see, pretty sturdy. Now while we're here, we can plug in these plugs here, which as you'll see, there's one here, one here. So you'll just want to plug these in. All right, no, that is the right way. Here's one. There's the second one. If you get confused which wire's which, they do have matching colours, so just pick and plug pretty much. So these 2 wires that I just told you how to plug in and which ones plug where, you'll see that this one connects to your electric start button here on the handlebars, and this one attaches to your kill switch button. So once your handlebars are now assembled with these 4 bolts here, you'll see here these clamps. Sometimes out of the box your handlebars might be bent towards you or away from you, and if they are bent away from you, all you have to do is again grab your 6mm Allen key, loosen these 4 bolts, and it'll move nice and freely. As you can see here, quite straight, but you do just want to double check these with a 6mm. There we go, and now your handlebars are definitely nice and secure now. So guys, moving on to the next part of the assembly for this bike, you're going to want to grab your fork box here, as you can see. You're also going to want to grab a 6mm Allen key. So firstly, you're going to want to put this box down for now, open her up. You want to grab a fork, take off the bubble wrap, come over to this side, because as you can see here, it's got these 2 holes. That's for your brake, so you know this fork is for the right side. Now a little thing I like to do to make sure you don't get the brake cable in the forks, just hang that over there for now. And then you can see all these wires here. You don't want these on the outside. So what you want to do is you want to push these to the side and then slide the fork up. As you can see here, they can be a bit tight while pushing it up, so you can just loosen them off while sliding it up. This just gives it a bit more wiggle room. Slide it up. Again, you can loosen it if it's a bit tight. There we go. And I personally like to line it up. I personally like to line it up so you can just see a little bit of the silver fork here. Now you can get this nice and tight, which will hold the fork in place, which means you can now get this bolt as tight as you can. Same with the one down here as well, as tight as you can get it. There we go. Now we can move on to the second fork. Same process, grab the fork. Again with the wires, make sure your wire is to the side. You can slide your fork up. And again, trying to make sure the same amount of fork is showing on both sides. And once you're happy, you can get this nice and tight. Once you've got all these bolts nice and tight, you can see your forks are now fitted. We can now move on to the next part. So moving on to the next part of the assembly for this bike, we're now going to move to the rear end. We're now going to fit the rear shock. So for this, you're going to need your rear nut and bolt, a 13mm spanner and a 14mm spanner. So a little tip, so if you've got a stand, you can use your foot to lift up the rear wheel, which during the assembly gives you more room with your hands, meaning it's a bit easier to get the rear shock bolt in. There we go. And now you can take your foot out, you can grab your nut, screw it onto the other side. There we go. Now you want to grab your 13 and your 14mm spanner. You want to put your 14mm spanner on the nut here, and your 13mm spanner on the bolt end. You can lift up this mud flap as it can get in the way. And then you want to make sure this is as tight as possible. Now once that's tight, your rear shock is now fully installed. So the next step of this assembly is we're going to be fitting the fork stickers. Now the reason I'm holding these is, as you can see here, this is the brake side fork cover. And as you can see on this sticker, the M2R logo is facing up, which means your fork sticker is also going to be wanted facing up, as you can see. And on the non-brake side, you can see the M2R logo is facing down, so you'll have the sticker facing the same way. So when you grab your stickers, you want to come to the front, so you want to peel your sticker, like so. And you can see on this little groove here, is like a groove and then there's a line. What I like to do is I like to line it up with this groove, like so. Now you can wrap it around the fork, and the same with the other side. So moving on to the next part of the assembly, we're going to be doing the front mud guard. The tool you'll need for this is an 8mm T-bar, or you can use a ratchet with an 8mm socket on it, but I'm going to be using the T-bar. And you'll also need your 3 8mm bolts that came in your parts bag. So let's move to the front. What you want to do, put this in at an angle, and you can see here, you want to be using this hole, and this hole. So you want to get your 8mm in already. Lift up the mud guard, try and line up the holes, and get this in finger tight. Once that one's in, you can grab your next one, and again, line it up. Can be a bit tricky, but you will get it eventually. There we go, again, finger tight. And then you can get your final 8mm. Now I'm going to grab my 8mm T-bar, or you can use your ratchet, and you want to make sure these are nice and tight. There we go. And once all these 3 bolts are nice and tight, you can see your front mud guard is now nice and secure. So next part of assembly we're going to do is going to be the fork covers. And for this you'll need both your fork covers, your bolts from the part bag, and these little, I don't know what you'd call them, little brackets, we'll call them. You'll also need 5mm Allen key. So if we move to the front of the bike, so you want to grab the one without this little plastic bit on. This is for this side. So what you want to do is you want to grab it, hold it like this, and then you want to grab one of these, and they just slide in the back like that, and there'll be 3 of these. So 2 go there, and then 1 will go here on the end. And these 3 holes will line up with these 2 here and this one here. So what you want to do is just gently put it on so these little brackets don't fall out. Now you can grab one of your 5mm bolts, and these should line up quite nicely. To be fair, I've never really had any issues. Again, by finger tight. Same with this one. And again, same for the one around the side. Once you have all these in just by finger tight, you can grab your 5mm Allen key and just nip them up. These don't need to be too tight, as long as you can't turn them anymore. That's tight enough. There we go. Now we can do the exact same on this side. So grab the cover, put your 3 little brackets in, like so, and then gently place it onto here. Now these brackets can fall out if you're not careful, so as long as you're careful they should stay in place. And again, finger tight, 5mm Allen key, and with them nice and tight, your fork covers are now installed. So moving on to the next part of the assembly, we're going to be doing the front number board here. And before we actually get onto the number board, there's a little bracket here, and I just want to talk you through how to do this, as this holds the number board on. So you'll have your 2 bolts here. You'll also need a 5mm Allen key. But as you can see, one of these bolts is smaller than the other. So you want to grab the smaller one for now. Come over to the front of the bike. And this sits underneath like that, lining up with the hole. Then your smaller bolt, you can screw in like that. Then you can grab your 5mm Allen key, Make sure this is nice and tight. So now you can grab your number board, take it out of the bag. Ta-da! Then you can grab the other bolt that you had for the number board, and you can push these wires behind a bit, and you'll see these two knobbles on the bottom here. They will go into these two gaps. Make sure the wires are behind the number board. Now with these wires up here, it's pretty much the same process with the forks and the handlebars. How anything from the right side will go to the left, and anything from the left will go to the right. So as much as you can, try and put it so it looks quite nice and tidy, like so. So now you can grab your second bolt, put it just in the gap for now, and you can grab your 5mm Allen key, and if it's nicely lined up, it should screw in nice and easily. Make sure it's tight. You can see, obviously these wires won't be as tight as this because our brake is still hanging. As you can see, it's a bit looser now. But now, your front number board is on the bike. So for the next part of the assembly, we're going to be doing your front wheel. For this, you're going to need, obviously, your front wheel, your front axle, which will have a small spacer and a big spacer. You'll also need a 17mm spanner and a 19mm spanner. So what you're going to want to do first is grab your front axle, take off the nut, remove your two spacers, and these two spacers, they're quite important. So when you've got your axle in, you'll want your small spacer on this side and your big spacer on this side. You'll see in a moment when it's all fitted. So you want to grab your front axle, poke it through, get your small spacer so it sits nicely. Now you want to grab your front wheel. You want to lift this up like so, and then you can push your front axle through. There we go. Sometimes the front axle just needs a bit of a, there we go. Grab your bigger spacer, slide it on there. Now your front axle can go all the way through. When it lines up. So yeah, sometimes they do need a bit of brute force, but once that's through, you can grab your nut, screw it on. Now you can grab your spanners. Your 19mm spanner will be on the nut side, and your 17 will be on the left side of the axle. So what you want to do, you want to make sure this is as tight as possible. There we go. Once that axle is through and all tight, you can now see your front wheel has now been installed. So moving on with the assembly, you're going to be now doing your front brake. So you're going to need your two 10mm bolts with the two washers on. You're also going to need a 10mm spanner. The first thing we're going to want to do is, as you can see in here, you've got this little brake pad spacer. You want to pull that out like so. Just shut that away for now. And you want to slide this onto the disc nice and easily. Sometimes this can be a bit tricky to line up because it might get stuck, but you can just push back the brake like so. Gives it a bit more room. And now you want to grab your 10mm bolt and just screw that in finger tight for now. Now we can line up the bottom one. There we are. Now once these are in, you can grab your 10mm spanner, and you want to make sure these are nice and tight. There's one. There's the other. And once that's on, you can now see your brake is nice and secure. We're ready to move on to the next part of the assembly. So guys, moving on to the next part of the assembly, we're going to be moving on to the front brake line clamp. For this, you're going to want to grab your two clamp parts, your two 5mm bolts, and your two 10mm nuts. And the tools you're going to need are a 10mm spanner, and a 5mm Allen key. So what you want to do is you want to grab one part of the clamp for now and a 5mm bolt. You want to put this on the right side and screw this through a little bit so it holds in. Now you want to grab your 5mm Allen key and you want to screw this all the way through. There we go. You want to do the same for the second 5mm bolt in the bottom. Get it in, use your Allen key. There we go, and once they're both through, you can then grab your other side of the clamp, just slide that on, and then your two 10mm nuts, you just want to loosely screw onto the end. So with these two clamps, so this one is obviously on the right side of the plastic, and this one's on the left side, and you can see there's a bit of a groove. This wants to be facing outwards, as you can see here. So once you've got these two nuts on, you can now grab your brake line, and you can see this pipe protector. And what you want to do is this little cap, this will go inside the clamp like that, and then you want to grab your 5mm and your 10mm. This bit can be a bit tricky, and making sure that your brake line is in the gap. You want to make sure this is nice and tight. So now that top one's tight, you can see the brake line's quite secure, so you don't need to hold that anymore. Now you can tighten the bottom one. There you go, and once that's tight, you can see that's in there nicely. And while we're here, because this is secure, we can now move up here, and this will just slot to the front number board, through there, and through the gap at the bottom. And as you can see, the brake line is now, it looks a lot nicer now. So moving on to the next part, we're going to be doing the foot pegs. Now these can be quite a pain, I can't lie. I personally don't enjoy doing them, but I'm sure you'll get along fine. So you're going to want to grab your foot peg, and these aren't universal, so you'll have to figure out like this. All you've got to do to make sure it is, put it in the gap, twist up, and as you can see that's the right one, but if you did it on the other side it wouldn't look right. You'll also want a spring, which again, these aren't universal, and you'll have to figure out which side goes where, and by doing this you'll put it on this gap, and you'll see that this bit will point up like this. That's what it should look like, and you'll know it's the right side. You'll also want this slide, and you'll also need a split pin. So let's get on with the assembly of the foot peg. And like I said, these can be quite a pain, but what you want to do is this little hook will go on this bit. So you slide it in with that on there, and you kind of want to put a finger holding this little metal bit, and then you want to push down and trying to line up the hole like that. Whew. Like I said, it can be a pain. So once this through, there's a little gap on the pin slide, and all you want to do is put your split pin through like so, and then wrap the split pin around itself. Let's just make sure that that little slide can't pop out, and as you can see, that foot peg is on. Now we can do the other side. So again, for this side footrest, you're going to want to grab the footrest itself, the spring, the slide, and the split pin. So again, you want to grab your spring and your footrest, and this slides on like this. I'll let you look at that for a second. And this little metal bracket again is going to hook on to this edge here, like so, like that. Now this is the part where you want to bend the footrest down and try your best to slide that in like so. Now once that's been slid through, you can grab your split pin and again slide it through the hole and bend it back on itself so it's nice and secure, and your spring can't come off. So moving on with the assembly, we're going to be doing the gear shifter, and for this you're going to need the gear shifter itself. You're also going to need a 5mm Allen key. So the first step is going to be removing this little 5mm bolt, like so. Once you've removed this, we can now come down here, and this is just going to sit nicely on here. Now this is all about personal preference. You can have it a bit lower, you can have it a bit higher, it's all about what you want. But I'm just going to put it just in the middle for now. And bear in mind, this little gap here, you can see it moves back and forth. You want to try and keep that as level as possible. So now you're going to grab your 5mm bolt, and just going to screw that in as far as you can get with your fingers. Now you can grab your 5mm Allen key, and still making sure that's nice and level. You can get this nice and tight, and you'll know when it's tight because as you can see it's still a bit wobbly, but when it gets tight enough it won't move at all. There we go. That's what you want to see. Now that's on, we can move on to the next part of the assembly. So moving on with the assembly process, we're going to be doing the kickstand. So for this, you're going to want to grab your kickstand, your bolt for your kickstand, your spring bracket, and your spring. The tools you'll need for this will be a 17mm spanner and a quite long screwdriver. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to see these springs here, how I move them down. You want to make sure that they're snug, sat next to each other, as you can see here. Then you want to grab your bracket, and the smaller side is going to go through the little hole on here. Once that's there, you can just leave that to the side for now. So now you want to grab your kickstand and the bolt, and this will just slide on there, and you want to screw this in. And then you can grab your 17mm spanner, and you can make sure this is tight. You want to make sure this is tight, but you don't want to over tighten it, or else there won't be any play in the kickstand. So as you can see here, it's still not tight enough. But if you do it too tight, you won't be able to put the kickstand up or down very easily. So about that, the bolt is nice and tight. It's got a bit of play in it, that's all right. So now you want to grab your bracket and your spring, and this top end will slide on here, push down like that. So now this bit is where you'll need your screwdriver. And I want to say, just be careful with this bit. It can be a bit dangerous, but it's the easiest way to get this spring on, as it is quite awkward. So what you're going to want to do is get your screwdriver, put it on the spring here. Now you want to grab the kickstand with your right hand. Pretty much you want to lever as you can see here, don't know if you can see very well, but you want to grab your screwdriver like this, and as you pull towards you with your screwdriver, you want to lift up the kickstand slightly, and doing so will clip it right on place like that. And you can see now there's no play, and the spring is now fitted. Your kickstand is now nice and secure. So moving on to the next part of the assembly, we're going to be doing the handguard for this bike. So first of all, I'm going to talk you through what parts you're going to get and what they're going to be for and what tools you're going to need. So first of all, you want to grab the actual handguard itself. And as you can see here, this little groove is on the top, which means it's going to be facing up like this, not this way around. You can also see this is the left-hand one. You'll also want to get your bracket, and these are also non-universal. And the only way you'll figure this out is by clipping it on and testing it on the bike to see if it is right. You'll also need a 5mm Allen key bolt and a 10mm nut. The tools you'll need for this will be a 4mm Allen key and a 10mm spanner. So the first step you're going to want to do is you're going to want to grab your handguard itself and the bracket, and this hole here, you want to line up with this, as this will just clip on nice and easily, like so. Then you want to grab your 5mm bolt, screw it in the hole a little bit. And once it's screwed in a little bit, you can grab your 4mm Allen key and you can screw it all the way through. And as you can see here, it's gone to the other side. And once it's gone through the other side, you can grab your 10mm nut and screw it on. Now you want to grab your 10mm spanner and your 4mm Allen key, and you want to make sure this is nice and tight, like so. And that is one handguard made up. So now we want to do it the same for the right hand side of the bike. So again, handguard, bracket, 4mm bolt and a 10mm nut. And again, 4mm Allen key, 10mm spanner. Press it on, 4mm bolt through, 4mm Allen key, till the bolt's all the way through. And as you can see here, it's through the end again. So you want to grab 10mm nut, screw it on, 10mm on the nut, and 4mm on this side. And again, make sure this is nice and tight. And that is both the handguards assembled. We can now move over to the bike and get them fitted. A nice little addition that you can add to the handguards if you want to, you don't have to, is you have these little M2R stickers here. So you want to peel the sticker like so, and these stickers will sit just here on the handguard like so. That's one side done. We'll do the same for the other side. It just adds a bit of character to your handguards, and I personally think they look a bit nice with the stickers on. So for the fitting of the handguards that we just made up, you're going to need a 4mm Allen key, a 5mm Allen key, and an 8mm spanner. So you're going to want to grab your 4mm Allen key and your handguard. First thing you're going to want to do, undo these bolts here. There's one, you just want to put these to the side for now. I'm going to take the second one out. So yeah, just put them to the side once that's come off, like that. Now you want to come back over to the bike. You're going to want your 8mm spanner, and there should be, for your throttle, there'll be two 8mm bolts here. You want to loosen off the top one. There we go, so once that's loose, what you want to do is you want to wiggle it down the handlebars, like so. So there's a nice gap here, as you can see, between the electric start and the clamp. And while we're here, you can do your angle bar levers, as you can see. This one I'm pointing down a bit more compared to this one. And once you've moved this along, before we tighten it back up, you can now grab your handguards and your two bolts. So you want to go under the front brake lever and into this little gap. Now once that's here, you can wiggle the rear bracket on. Can be a bit tight. So there we go. Now you can grab your 4mm bolt, like so, and your 4mm Allen key. Get it slightly tight so it's holding on. Now you can get the bottom bolt in, same as the top. Push it through, and then get your 4mm. And you can tighten this one fully now, as we've got the top bolt in. But you want to make sure the handguard is high enough to cover your hands, as you can see. You don't want it too low, or else it won't be doing much. But you don't want it too high. You don't want it up here. You want it just about there. So you can hold that still while you do this to ensure it doesn't move. So once that's on, you can see that's nice and on, nice and tight. So now we can tighten up the front brake clamp. So now moving on to the left side of the handlebar, we're still going to grab this. We're going to do the same with the 4mm Allen key. Undo these bolts. Now you want to grab your 5mm Allen key, and underneath there will be a 5mm Allen key right here. You want to loosen this one off, and once it's loose, again you'll be able to wiggle this down, give it a nice gap, and again adjust your levers while you're here. Again, your levers can be about personal preference. If you like them flatter, you can have them flat. If you want them further down, you can have them further down. But we ideally have them about straight arm down, so about there. So now you want to grab your handguard again with the clamp and the two bolts. Same routine, under, same with the clamp, at the back and under. And you want to grab a bolt and screw it in. And same with the bottom bolt. Just careful of this wire, you don't want to trap the wire. You want to try and ensure that your handguards are about the same level. This can be difficult by eye, but it should be all right. So now again, your 4mm Allen key. Once they're nice and tight, now we can then adjust this for the last chance and make it tight. So again, 5mm Allen key at the bottom. And now you want to tighten it with your desired angle. And with that, your handguards are both nice and secure and securely fitted. Moving on to the next part of the assembly, we're going to be doing the bar pad and the bar pad cover. This is going to sit nicely on the handlebars here. All you got to do, take off the Velcro, put that on there, wrap that around it, and it will look like this. One of the final steps of this assembly is going to be attaching the breather pipe. That just goes right on the fuel cap, nicely like that. So moving on to the battery, unlike most batteries we sell, you have to manually put in the lead acid. So first of all, I want to ensure you are wearing gloves for this assembly part, as it can get on your hands and it does sting. The first thing you want to do is remove the nuts and bolts for the assembly of the battery on the bike. Put that to the side for now. I'm going to pull off this tab, put that in the bin, and then you want to carefully get a knife and you want to carefully pierce the top of this plastic, like so. This just allows you to rip it off a bit easier. And once you've got this bit of plastic off, you can pull this black plastic tab off. You want to keep this, do not chuck this away. So now you want to align this with these holes here. You need to put quite a bit of body weight on it and it crunches down, and this will start draining all these into the battery. Now, if any of them aren't going down, what you can do is you do receive a little pin to help with this, but you can just use a knife, and if you just carefully put a little hole in it, you can see it goes down. So if any of them do get stuck, just put a little hole and it drains them a bit quicker. So as you can see, all these have been drained. So what you want to do is carefully pry it off to stop any dripping. Now back to this black tab, you want to put these on like so. Now you want to grab the butt end of a screwdriver and you just want to gently tap this down. You want to make sure there is no, like you can see a bit there, make sure that's down, because it can cause leaks and we don't want anything leaking, as this can be harmful. Now once this is on, we can now move over to fitting it to the bike. So now we have assembled the battery, we can now move on to fitting it to the bike. The first thing you're going to want to do is under the rear mud guard here, you can see a flying up. You want to unscrew that. Once that's undone, you can then carefully lift off the seat, like so. Put that to a side for one now. Now we can grab our little bag, open it up and put it to the side. So what I recommend doing is getting your two little blocks and putting them in before you put the bike in the battery. So one in this side and one in the other side. The reason I do this is because it can be a bit fiddly when the battery's already in. So now you can see the negatives on the left side here and the positive on the right. You want to make sure that the positive on the battery is also corresponding with the wires. Drop the battery into the slot, like so. Now here you want to make sure the key is off, as you don't want to give yourself a little shock, not very pleasant. Now you're going to want your two little screws and a Phillips screwdriver. And now what you can do, get the negative, pull back the little cover, put the screw in, and use your screwdriver to attach it to the little block inside. Once it's tight, you can then put the little cover back over, and now we can move over to the positive. Same principle, but this one's got two little hoops, and make sure they're still together. Grab your bolt, put it through them both, and into the terminal. And once that one's tight again, you want to put the little cover on like that. So once that's on, you can do a little check. If you want to turn the key, make sure it's not in gear, and press the electric start, you can hear the battery is working. You can turn that off. So now you've got your battery installed, we can now get the seat refitted. And this is a very simple thing. All you need to do is, if you have a look here, you can see this little gap that will slide under this bolt here, and this little plastic notch that will slide under here. So a little tip for getting the seat back on, put it about here. If you push down on the middle and push up, this will align both the gaps like that. Once it's in, your seat should just press back down, and as you can see, there's no gap here, and that won't come up. So once you've got the seat on, you can now grab your fly nut and your washer, come back down to the bottom, and you can just screw this back on. And with the battery installed, we can now move on to finishing the bike. So moving on to the next part of the assembly, we're now going to be removing all of the sticker protection stickers. This is my personal favourite part of the build, as it's just so satisfying and I love doing it every time. Let's start peeling. So now you've got all the sticker protectors off, you can just see how beautiful this bike looks with the colouring to the decals. It just looks amazing. But we can now move on to the next part, which will be your full nut and bolt check of the bike. And you have to make sure you do this before every ride, as it's a safety precaution that we insist you do. So before you take this bike on a ride, every single time you should be doing a full nut and bolt check of the vehicle. I'm now going to run you through all the bolts you should be checking. So starting at the back here, you're going to want to check your brake disc bolts. You're going to want to check your rear axle. You want to make sure your brake's nice and tight. You want to make sure that your actual brake master cylinder is nice and tight. Your brake lever. You want to check all these bolts on the engine here. You want to check up here before I forget for the exhaust bolt. You want to check the top bolt for your shock. You want to check this plastic bolt here. You want to check this bolt down here. You want to check your two exhaust bolts here. You want to check these two bolts here. You want to check the two here. You want to check the 4 bolts on the front of the engine down here. You're going to want to check your front axle. Your fork cover bolts again. 2 bolts here for your forks. You want to check this bolt here, and there's 1 in here for the plastics. So moving on to the other side of the bike, you're going to want to do the exact same thing, and I'm again going to run you through what you want to check. So again, starting at the back, you've got these bolts here for your rear sprocket. You want to make sure that your kickstand is nice and tight. You've got a plastic bolt here. You've got a few bolts on here, around here. You've got this bolt here. You've got a few bolts here. You've got a bolt here. You can check this side just in case this wasn't tight. You've got a plastic bolt up here. 2 bolts on here. Now moving to the front. Again, you want to check your fork bolts. Check your clamp bolts. And check the 2 bolts for your brake at the front there. Once you've done this full nut and bolt check, you're almost ready to ride this bike. So guys, and with that, you've now finished your RS-R 140 build. And like I said, there's one more step before you can ride this bike, and that's to make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And don't forget to wear your protective gear, your helmets, your overalls, your gloves. You can find these in the link in the description or the link in our bio. I've been Finn. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll answer them as quick as I can. And I hope I've been a helping hand today, and I'll see you in the next one.